Most people see a pair of old, broken shoes and think they are trash. But for Thomas, these shoes were the only thing keeping his family's hope alive. Every morning, before the sun touched the rooftops, Thomas stood by the door and tied his laces. They were thin and frayed, much like his own energy, but he had a promise to keep. His son, Leo, was only 7 years old. Leo was a bright boy with eyes that stayed fixed on the horizon, but his legs didn't work the way other children's did. He needed a specific medicine every single day, a medicine that was sold in a town 20 miles away. There were no buses that ran that early, and Thomas had no car. He didn't even have a bicycle. All he had were his feet and a heart full of love. The journey began in the dark. The air was usually cold, biting at his skin, but Thomas didn't mind the cold. He minded the time. If he didn't reach the pharmacy by noon, they would close for the day, and Leo would have to go a night without his breath-easy treatment. The first 5 miles were always the easiest. His mind would wander to Leo's smile. He remembered the way Leo looked at his school books, dreaming of the day he could walk to school on his own. That thought was like fuel. It pushed Thomas forward through the dirt paths and over the rocky hills. By mile 10, the sun was high. The heat began to soak into his clothes. His feet started to throb. Every step felt like walking on hot coals, but he didn't stop to rest. He knew that if he sat down, his muscles would freeze and he might not get back up. He thought about the small jar of coins in his pocket. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He had worked extra hours cleaning floors just to make sure that jar was never empty. Around mile 15, the psychological weight began to set in. This is where most people would give up. His legs were shaking and his breath was heavy. A truck drove past him, kicking up a cloud of dust. The driver didn't look back. For a moment, Thomas felt a wave of sadness. Why was life so hard? Why did he have to walk while others drove? But then he reached into his pocket and felt his small, folded piece of paper. It was a drawing Leo had made. It was a picture of a giant man carrying a small boy on his shoulders. In that moment, Thomas realized he wasn't just a man walking on a road. In his son's eyes, he was a hero, and heroes do not stop because their feet hurt. He reached the town just as the bells rang for noon. His face was covered in dust and his shirt was wet with sweat. When he walked into the pharmacy, the woman behind the counter looked at him with pity. She saw his broken shoes and his tired eyes. She didn't know he had walked 20 miles. She just thought he was another poor man. But when he placed his coins on the counter, he stood tall. He bought the medicine, tucked it safely into his inner pocket, and turned around. The walk back was even harder. The adrenaline was gone. The sun was setting, and the shadows grew long. His body was screaming for him to lie down in the grass and sleep, but the medicine had to reach Leo before bedtime. As he neared his village, the moon began to rise. His legs moved like heavy stones. He was no longer walking with his muscles. He was walking with his soul. Finally, he saw the yellow light of his small home. He pushed the door open. The house was quiet. His wife looked up, her eyes filling with tears of relief. She didn't say a word. She just took the medicine and went to Leo's bedside. Thomas sat on a wooden chair and finally took off his shoes. His socks were stained red and his feet were covered in blisters. A few minutes later, he heard a small voice from the bedroom. "Dad, are you home?" Thomas stood up, ignoring the pain, and walked to his son's room. Leo looked up, breathing clearly now, his face full of life. "I knew you would come," Leo whispered. "You always come back." Thomas sat on the edge of the bed and held his son's hand. He didn't tell Leo about the 20 miles. He didn't tell him about the heat, the dust, or the pain in his chest. He just smiled and said, "I'll always be here, Leo, no matter how far the road is." That night, Thomas slept in his chair. He knew that in a few hours the sun would rise again. He knew his feet would still hurt, and the road would still be 20 miles long. But as he looked at his broken shoes near the door, he didn't see trash. He saw the path to his son's future. Love isn't found in the words we say when things are easy. Love is found in the miles we walk when everything tells us to stop. If you are struggling today, remember Thomas. Remember that your hard work, your quiet sacrifices, and your tired steps are building a bridge for someone you love. You might feel invisible to the world, but to the people who need you, you are a giant. Keep walking. Keep